What's going on, guys? It's Phil with Mastercrafted. And as you'll notice, I have a new co-host next to me, or a new member next to me. His name is Mike Pestilens, one of the great members of the Denver 40k Fight Club community. He is also a MHM member, Mile High Militarum, one of the strongest teams here in Colorado. And we played against each other this weekend at the Wyoming Teams Tournament. And then the one thing that we discussed, and Mike and I discussed after pairings, before pairings, is just how much pairings matter. We've done a few short form content in terms of pairing, but we want to bring that back and give you a little bit more information on how to pair as a captain or a player and the mentality you need to have. But Mike, why don't you just give us a little bit of background, your experience in 40K, all that stuff, so the viewers can get to know you.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. Just going to say, love me a little Mastercrafted. Loved everyone on your team, man. Dude, Phil, great to see you, man. Happy to be here with you. Yeah, so my background, I started playing 40K kind of mid-8th edition. I became known for playing some would say creative, some would say crazy chaos lists. Love all the chaos armies. These days I've expanded a little bit just because teams kind of forced me to go down a few different paths. But yeah, no, sorry about that. Everyone's just getting over a little bit of a cold. I hope that's okay. But yeah, no, love playing Tournament 40K. Love playing Teams 40K especially. I think it's the best way to play. And one of the downsides is I think there is not very much information about teams out there. Because everyone that knows how to do pairings, knows how to do teams, kind of guards it like their life depends on it. It's like Fort Knox trying to get any teams information out of a lot of the top teams players out there. So yeah, happy to come on here, show a little love to Mastercrafted, and go ahead and talk about the details that people might not know about behind the scenes of competitive teams 40K.
Oh, great. Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it, and I know the viewers will as well. I will give you one more shout out. Not only did you do great this weekend, 3-1 is a fantastic record. Not only did you do that, you went to Challengers Cup with Papal Supremacy, and you drew Australia in the final round. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, we had a great time. Challengers Cup a few weeks ago. I think the biggest 8-person teams event in the history of North America, at least the US. And yeah, I was on a team, we finished third, including Italian Team Australia in the final round. So the funny thing about that is I didn't play the greatest 40K of my life. I think I individually went 3-3. But one of the great things about teams is even if you're not like playing perfectly and getting like 20s every game, as long as you're part of the team and building people up, bringing good energy and kind of jumping on some grenades as needed, still scrapping out some points, your team can still have a lot of success. And actually the funny thing is I was on the stream game for the final round, my Demons versus Team Australia's GSC. And it was really funny. I got it 10-10 by exactly 1 point. And our team tied by exactly 1 point. We got it 75-85, which is a WTC tie. So a little bit of luck, a little bit of skill there. I was very happy to contribute to that, to the team's great performance. Shout out to my boy, Sam Pope, for captaining.
Yeah, no, you guys did great. I was so happy to see how well y'all did, which was just like an amalgamation of like great players, but you had the right team comp with the right players and the right pairings that got you into a position to tie a national team that is full of just like chock full of incredible players, and you were able to bring them to a draw. So yeah, huge shout out. That must have been an incredible feeling to get that far and play that well. Yeah, no, you guys did great. So, accolades aside, let's move on. When we talk about teams and the preparation, you've obviously been a part of quite a few different teams, but when you're building lists and you're getting ready, are there some general ideas you put in your head in terms of what actually makes a good 8-man team or 5-man, like just teams in general? What do you think you need going in? Just general ideas.
Yes. Okay, Phil, I'm going to tell you the number one most important thing. If you're building a team of 8 players, have people bring 8 armies they're comfortable with and they want to play. I've seen people try to do the thing where they force someone on an army they don't want to play because they're like, oh, it's perfect for the Matrix. Oh, the army is so good. And I've seen that just bomb so many times. The players don't have fun, which is, first of all, fun's the reason we're doing this. It's by far the most important thing. So first of all, I think that ruins the fun. I'm not a fan of it all. But second, it just does not work. So when building an 8-person roster, the number one thing I ask when we finish the comp is, hey, does everyone want to actually play the list they have? If the answer is no, that's totally fine. We'll work with you, try to figure something else out. But if you're like a newer team out there, please don't tell one of your guys or ladies or whoever wants to play, you got to play this army. It'll be so perfect. It just does not work. You will regret it. That's my number one promise to you. So in terms of building an 8-person comp, one is we lean into armies people are good at. I'd rather have a faction expert than someone worse on a better army. And the second part of that is think of what are like the 2 or 3 strongest armies you're likely to face, and also the strongest players you're likely to face. Like, let's be real, Phil. At the Wyoming Hammer event, shout out to Lane and Wesley for running that. But there were a lot of talented teams, a lot of up-and-coming teams. But being real, I think there were maybe 2 or 3 teams that I think were most likely to contend, right? And that is, again, there's no offense to the other teams, a lot of talent in the area, a lot of up-and-comers, but I think just being at this event right now with the 8-person rosters I saw, I kind of focused on the 2 or 3 top teams. I thought the strongest contenders were, I mean, us if we get lucky and have a good day, but also the Mastercrafted team. Shout out to y'all, Phil. Incredible roster over there. I thought the Brotan team, some really heavy hitters, some fantastic experienced players. So I was kind of thinking, like, what are the best armies right now in the meta in teams? I think right now the very common strong armies are AdMech. I think AdMech are just out of control. I don't know how they got all those buffs. And then I thought that Eldar are also very common. I think like basically every team has like this dumb war hoster aspect host. You know, you got the Fire and Fade Fuegan Brick with Fire Dragons. That's insane. So I wanted to make sure our roster had several answers to both of those 2 armies, and then also thinking about what the top players are going to bring. For example, on Mastercrafted, just being real, I know you've got some of the top players in Mastercrafted. Let me think for a sec. It was a little hard to predict what you were going to bring. But I know, for example, Nick Souls can bring some sort of Eldar. You have an excellent Eldar and Dark Eldar player in your team. There'll be some sort of elves. And just a few things like that. Holbrook, very likely bring orcs. I think John Holbrook's one of the best orc players in the US, especially when he's locked in on the faction and stuff like that. So I want to make sure we had answers for those. Does that kind of answer that question, or do you want more details about our specific 8 teams?
No, I think that's great. Like, just in general summary, right? Like, I think your first point was the most important. Like, if you have 8 players that are playing lists that they don't enjoy, you're just going to have a miserable team experience. Like, it's not going to be fun. You're not going to enjoy
100%.
it. And and we're at a place in 40K, which is great. We are so balanced as a edition that you can play armies that are like off the beaten path in teams because they have a role to fill.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you're playing an army you enjoy and you're doing stuff like that, like you can find solutions for it. And absolutely, totally.
That's
agree.
A really great point. Yeah, the meta, 100% Phil. The meta is in a really good spot. And I think we're at the point in the edition where player skill is by far the most important thing. Although I will say with the one caveat that I think AdMech is the one army I think is a little out of control, especially in a team setting. So I really want to make sure we get answers for them. Actually, to my earlier point, speaking of the top players, I think Matt Evans was on your team. I think he's one of the best players in the state. Shout out to my boy Matt. Just being real, he plays. I know he has AdMech. I had a feeling y'all were gonna have him on AdMech because a really strong player on a really strong army. So I wanted to make sure I brought at least a couple of solutions in our roster for if Matt brought AdMech, how do we scrape out some points versus that specific pairing?
Yeah. No,
just
totally
a few
agree.
more thoughts on our specific roster. Oh, go ahead, Phil.
No, you're good.
Cool. Yeah, just a few more thoughts on our specific roster. The big decision point was actually me, like in the sense I had all 7 people kind of pick their armies, and I waited to the end because I play the most armies well. And plus, I kind of have a good feel for, I guess, the most experience making a team comp, so I could kind of be like, hey, you 7 guys, pick what you want, and I'll kind of fill in as needed. I'm most known for playing demons. That's the army I have by far the most experience with. But the big issue with demons right now is they get hunted really hard in teams. They get destroyed by AdMech. It's not even a game. They have a really hard time with the Fuegan Brick Eldar type lists, and they get just auto destroyed by orcs. And I was looking at the Mastercrafted comp. I'm thinking Matt Evans on AdMech, John Holbrook probably on orcs, Nick Rosacco probably on some form of Fire and Fade Eldar. I can't just be an auto 0-20 into half of the top team's roster. So I was looking for other armies, and I've had a lot of success with Grey Knights before. Podiumed a couple GTs with them, even though I'm not really a main Grey Knights guy. I think the army has a lot of mechanics similar to demons, so it's very easy to kind of pick up and play for me. And I thought Grey Knights were an excellent addition to our comp. I know y'all ran the Grey Knights Banisher list. I think that's a good list because it's good at blunting. The one I brought was Warpbane. Warpbane is known for super high damage and very good ability to deliver the damage. So they're a lot better at teams because they can put up really high scores into armies that are vulnerable to things like mass damage one shooting, and they are very good into AdMech and Eldar, which are 2 armies our comp really struggled with otherwise. And actually, it was really cool to see, like, I specifically brought the army to, I wouldn't say hunt AdMech and Eldar, but at least like put up like decent scores in them. And then I played AdMech and I got a a 17 there. Played Eldar twice and I got a 17 and a 19. So it was really cool just to see the theory actually work out in practice. So I brought this army, might not be my number 1 favorite, but I do really enjoy playing it. The other decision point we had was we've got a player from the team, awesome guy, love playing with Frank. He was choosing between Emperor's Children and Death Guard. And we didn't have like an army that's very good at scoring like 10s into the field. Death Guard are very good at that. I know Frank has played them before. He's got a beautifully painted Death Guard army. So I asked him, like, hey, Frank, are you cool playing Death Guard? He was totally happy with that. Emperor's Children are really good too in teams, but we kind of already, the armies that Emperor's Children are good into, we already had several good matchups for, whereas we didn't have ways to blunt the things that Death Guard are good at blunting at. So yeah, that was kind of conceptually, and then we kind of fell into place. The rest of the guys, like Gorney's playing a lot of GSC lately, did well with them, for example, and such and such.
Yeah, absolutely. That is fantastic information. And I think for captains or players that are hearing this, it sounds like a lot, right? Like it sounds like, oh man, I have to worry about all these factions and all these armies. No. Think about it more in line with what problems are we looking to solve, right? You know, Mike only talked about
said.
3 or 4, yeah, 3 of the 4 top armies. Like we could worry about the entire field of 30, teams and all these factions and all that stuff, but like teams will reward however much work you're willing to do to prepare for it. But your work has to be efficient. So, we did the same thing Mike did. Like, hey, these are like the ones that we're scared of the most. Okay, do I have answers for these 4 armies? For us, it was like stuff like World Leaders. Like, we know there's going to be a few World Leader players out there. We're concerned with that. Specifically on some of these very dense WTC boards, do we have an answer for these aggressive armies like EC, like World Leaders, like Orcs? And our answer to that, honestly, was like myself as GSC just being like, hey, throw me in there. I'll get a 10. Like, I'll score no matter what. Nyx Eldari or Drakari, which is the new witch cult, which was obnoxious. It's not fun to play against when you're an aggressive army because they have a charge at the end of the movement phase. They have fights first. They have all these like great tricks. And we were just like, okay, that's a tool, right? And that's the things we're doing. And then we had our own tools, right? We had an aggressive army, which if I'm giving one recommendation to, team captains or players out there is like, I want at least one aggressive army. Now, there are so many armies that do aggressive, right? World Leaders do aggressive. EC does aggressive. We chose Blood Angels. So I had a Blood Angel specialist that's all he played. And I was like, great. Like, I just want you to build the most aggressive, no guns, Blood Angels list possible. I want JPI. I want Death Company. I just want you to just jam it all in there and give me an aggressive Blood Angels list. And we made him the defender pretty much every round. We gave him WTC 6 and we said, hey, Corey, like, your only job is to score points here. You don't have to worry about shooting. You have great, great cover. You have great, WTC walls. And they can't hide from you. So like that was one of our tools, and that was one of the things that I think if you're building an 8-man team, like you got to have at least one aggressive army. For y'all, it was like Trey's CSM and Gorney's Biosanctic, right? Like those are probably the 2 most aggressive armies. Biosanctic being the significant, more aggressive of the 2.
Let me ask you, Phil, because this is interesting. When you say aggressive, do you mean like aggressive in melee or trying to push big scores?
It can be both. For me,
it can be both. I like that.
I just want an aggressive themed army. I would actually consider my GSC aggressive because my GSC will deny points out the wazoo. Like I will throw things on your objective. I have great OC and I'm just looking to deny points. And that's the way I can be aggressive. If your team comp doesn't have a Blood Angels or a World Leaders or an EC, that's perfectly fine. Multiple facets of being aggressive. And I think points denial is one. I think like combat aggressive is another. I would actually consider, I would throw AdMech in there as being one of those like shooting aggressive armies, right? Because if I could, if I put it on a GW open board, that is in a very, very aggressive army because they will infiltrate right off your line. They will tag you turn 1. You are boxed in. It's real bad for some armies to deal with. So
that's a very smart point, Phil. And one more pointer I want to give, because often, especially newer teams, when they're trying to go to their first Teams event, they think, hey, it's Teams. I can pick my matchups. I'm going to bring some silly skew. And I'll be like, hey, I'll bring like 4 big knights and I'll pair 4 big knights into something that can't handle that. Or I'll bring like, 300 bodies or whatever. And I'll find like the one roster in the opponent's army that can't handle this and I'll just destroy that. And I'm going to warn you right now, that does not work as well as you think. And there's a reason that basically all of the top WTC teams or top finishers at big Teams events are like 8 pretty normal looking armies. Because if you have a very skewed list one direction, that means you've got a very skewed list the other direction that's just as vulnerable. Now, so I specifically want to bring armies that were not like, this like silly list that will like destroy one specific matchup. Because if the opposing team is good, they will notice that and they will just make sure that doesn't happen. In Teams, if you're like, hey, there's one army that will just auto-destroy this other army, if the other parent's captain is like vaguely awake while he or she is doing that, you're never going to get that pairing. So don't think of like this dream scenario brings weird skew that's like good into one thing. It just will not work out. And the other thing I want to talk about is the concept of what's called pairings princesses. Basically armies that will put up like 20s in some matchups and then like zeros into a lot. I think Eldar are a really good example of this right now, where they will just utterly destroy specific matchups, but also like can kind of get hunted. A couple armies like that is okay, but don't like have a roster full of like 8 pairings princesses where you need like pairings to go perfectly for you. Because again, that'll destroy the like newer teams. But guess what? Like if you're trying to level up, you're not trying to beat like the people doing pairings for the first time. You're trying to beat the people that practiced pairings 30 times before the event. Those are the guys you're trying to beat. Guys and gals you're trying to beat. So yeah, don't be like, I'm gonna bring an army and like hope my opponent makes mistakes in pairings. That only hinders your growth in the long run, and it will give you worse results in the short term. So I just want to put that little detail out there, because we're speaking about, talked earlier about some mistakes for newer teams to avoid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was one of the first mistakes I made when we went to our first Teams event. I brought Death Guard, and I was like, I'm going to bring the anti-combat skew. I had 2 10-man bricks with fights first. I had all these units, and I was like, if I go into a combat army, I will absolutely obliterate it. Well, we did that. Yeah. And we did that for the first couple rounds, like the first 2 rounds. We went into those armies. I got paired into those combat armies. It was great. And then I went into Kit Smith's Necrons, and it was the uppy down Necrons. And I just got picked up off the board. And Kit Smith is a fantastic player, and he obviously well-deserved, but they are a good team that didn't allow that pairing to happen. I saw it firsthand, and I was like, never doing that again. You will never, ever catch me doing that again. Not in that way. It was very bad.
Yeah, Phil, if I can give you one word to maybe make you feel better, Kit's a very good friend of mine. I got my ass kicked by that exact list several times on TTS. You are not alone in getting destroyed by that list. Trust me. Phil, I can give you a hug through the screen. You and I have both suffered greatly at the hand of Kit's Necrons. So if it makes you feel a little bit better, we've both been there. But I think that's a great example of what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Feels so much better.
Yeah.
Before we go on to the actual pairings process and Mike and I's thoughts regarding all of those things, I will give you one more mistake that a lot of teams will make as they're building their team comps and rosters that hopefully help trigger something for you in terms of going in. But there's a lot of different terrain layouts for teams tournaments. WTC does obviously all WTC terrain. A lot of tournaments here in the US will do a split. They'll do partial of WC terrain and they'll do another partial of GW terrain. They will also do obviously a mix and match of tournaments or of deployments and layouts and missions. One of the things as a captain you need to be super considerate of is what those terrains look like. And instead of like trying to analyze every one, I would say you need to identify which armies can take advantage of which pieces of terrain. And this advice will connect to when we talk about the pairing process. But, which armies can actually take advantage of the terrain. Because there's some armies that, even in a bad matchup, with the right terrain, can do well or even score points. So those pairing princesses Mike was talking about, we can protect them even more if we're like, hey, even in a bad matchup, you can go get points because we put you on the right board. So just take a look at the terrain. Take a look at the missions. Be cognizant of those things. For me, GSC, if I see Purge the Foe in the late rounds, I might not even take GSC because I'm like, I'm giving up significant points. I have to work pretty hard to get those things against a good player. That's even tougher. Thankfully, this tournament, Purge the Foe was round 1 because I was like, so the odds are relatively higher that I should be okay round 1. And then Terraform was round 3 and Lynchpin was round 4. I was like, those are 2 of my best missions. Like I will score Terraform. If I go first, pretty much game over because I'm terraforming everything and I'm controlling everything. So it's like, just put it in the back of your head, right? Like you don't need to evaluate every layout, but which armies are going to take advantage of which boards?
No, Phil, I think you made an excellent point there. I just want to highlight one thing you said, which is if you're someone that, and this applies to singles too, if you're someone that's hoping to contend, whether you're good enough to do that or maybe a little delusional and hoping to get lucky, but either way, if you're hoping to contend, pay extra attention to the missions and terrain layouts you're going to play for the final several missions. For example, you brought up a really good point. Your army is bad on Purge of the Foe, but Purge the Foe was round 1, and your team was heavily favored into everyone, so it doesn't really matter if you kind of give up a few points there, as long as your army is good into when you're playing the top tables on day 2. And that was actually a mistake I made at a recent GT I attended. Just to get a very slight tangent, I brought a Soulforged Warpack CSM list. Super cool army. It's a very niche detachment, but it's really fun. But I didn't even look at the mission pack at all before the event, and all of the missions and layouts on day 2 were pretty awful for the list. So I started off 3-0, playing pretty well. win the first game day 2, but then I run into 2 really good players on the 5th and 6th final rounds, and my list loses both because I didn't pay attention to what matchups I'm going to be playing at the most important stakes, at the most important games. So yeah, really good point. I just want to highlight something you mentioned there, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now to move on to the actual pairing process. Like, you guys have done all your work. You have your 8 lists, 8 excited players that are loving the list. They're enjoying themselves. You've kept a positive attitude. You've encouraged your players. You've done all the prep.
Yeah.
And you sit down at the table in front of your other, team captain. And, what are your first things that are crossing your mind after you've evaluated the opponent's team to put out your first defender?
Sure. So, but the first thing I do when I sit down is I always try to build some sort of camaraderie with the other team. I don't even know if this is like conscious or just like unintentional, but I'll maybe compliment something on the roster, or be like excited to see you, or like maybe ask them some questions about where they're from or something, because you're going to spend 4 hours with these people and you're about to do this like very like technical kind of, I don't want to say high stakes because ultimately it's just 40k, but like for 40k event, this like high stakes pairing process that kind of decides the round. And I don't want it to feel like stressful at all or feel sweaty. So the first thing I try to do is I kind of build camaraderie and make sure we're here to have fun. So yeah, just want to throw that out there.
Absolutely.
But when you're thinking about pairings, Phil, do you want to give a quick recap of how the pairings process works, just for having like totally new people here? You want to give a little background?
Yeah. So the general theme of a pairing process, without going every step, is each team will put out a defender, and your opposite team will put out 2 attackers to go into that defender. Your responsibility as the captain is to pick which attacker you want to face the defender, and then you work your way down the line until you get to the scrum. And there's this very technical process where you're forgetting one, you're rejecting another, and your opponents are doing the same. So it's kind of this like the last 3 pairings, you're pretty much flipping all at the same time to figure out, what the final result is of your last 3 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right. It's a very technical process. Another thing to put in the back of your head is the defender will always pick the board. Now, it snakes in terms of which team will pick, but just to put in the back of your head is defender will always pick the board. But obviously, as the round goes on, the boards get less and less and less. And very rarely are there duplicates. So there may be one, but they're different boards. It's always the same mission. It's always the same layout for all 8 teams. But that is just the general, hey, they put out a defender, we put out a defender, 2 attackers into their defender, 2 attackers in our defender. We get to pick, they get to pick.
Yeah, no, Phil, that was a perfect rundown. I didn't want to lose anyone as we got into more technical stuff right there. So thank you for doing that. So yeah, so conceptually speaking, you want to defend with armies that A, benefit from board choice, B, don't get destroyed by 2 armies in the opponent's roster. So let's talk about the 2 armies thing. Because you're getting attacked by 2 armies from your opponent's roster, your defender is going to play one of those 2 armies. So what's the worst possible defender to defend with? It's an army that maybe has 6 good matchups and then 2 bad matchups. Because what's going to happen is you put down your defender, they attack with those 2 bad matchups, and suddenly your army that's good into most of their armies will be forced to play one of those 2 bad armies. Okay? You also, again, want to focus, I think you brought a good point of table choice. If you're an army like, what's a classic shooting army? Like Guard, for example. Let's just say you're very shooty. I mean, Guard can build a few different directions, but let's say it's a very shooty Guard list, like 5 or 6 tanks, all with direct fire. If that list gets to play on the board choice of a World Eaters army, they're going to be very much neutered, because the World Eaters are going to pick a board with a lot of very heavy terrain, all the objectives like, safe behind ruins, and then the fact that the Guard can shoot infinitely hard in direct line of sight will not matter at all. So yeah, conceptually speaking, you want to defend with armies that need their board choice and can't be what's called pinned. So that term for like when you're like attacked by 2 armies and forced to pick the lesser of 2 evils, that's called a pin. Okay. So another concept I think is very important in pairing strategy is, well, first let's talk about matrices quickly. So just, again, stepping back for I think most people listening are going to know what this is, but if you're totally new to teams, a matrix is before the round starts, before the pairings process starts, you kind of make a matrix like a 8x8 square of your 8 rosters and the opposing team's 8 rosters. Then you can use like a 1 through 5 scale and a 0 through 20 scale, like a green or red scale, but basically you predict how good that matchup is for your armies. Okay. So basically you have information ahead of time for how you think those matchups are going to go. So when I say, hey, I think this army is bad into 2 opposing armies, it's not like me guessing at the table, but rather ideally you've prepared ahead of time. It's not like you have to prepare like a month ahead of time. Just get your team together 15 minutes before the round starts and be like, hey, how do you think each of these armies does against these 8 armies? So yeah. For the ultimate first defender, I think it can be a little bit of a trap to maybe put down your strongest army as a first defender. I see a lot of teams do this if they're newer. For example, AdMech right now they shoot extremely hard, and they love having board choice in most matchups because they actually have pretty good melee, so they can pick like a denser board against all shooting. They can pick an open board against all melee. So you think, hey, I've got the strongest army in the game. I'm going to give them board choice. I'm going to defend with that first. Well, the issue is you don't want to let the opponent off the hook, because as soon as you put that AdMech down as the first defender, your opponent no longer has to think, I have the threat of AdMech hanging over me for every future pairing. So I don't like to use my strongest roster right away, or maybe strongest player. Like if you're on a team where there's one player that's maybe clearly better, he or she is just a lot more experienced, is going to put up really high scores, I don't like to put them down right away and kind of tell my opponent, hey, you've gotten this one out of the way. I want them thinking every single pairing for the rest of the game, holy cow, how do I avoid getting wrecked by this really strong army? So yeah, an ideal defender is maybe an army that has a lot of like average matchups, one or two. I mean, hopefully not like two very bad ones, was called a dark red normally, and benefits from table choice. So I think, for example, against Yol, we first defended Tau. We had an excellent Tau player, John Kilcommons. But the thing with his Tau list is it wasn't like super shooty, but it was definitely wants board choice. And most importantly, it didn't have a lot of bad matchups. And the other part of that was I think it had it wasn't very good into Yol. Like it didn't have any matchups. He's like, oh, I'm dying to get me this. I'm gonna put up a 20. So the fact that A, I didn't mind like using it up early. B, it really wanted table choice. And C, there wasn't a combination of two attackers for you that were like both gonna put up like huge scores against this Tau. Kind of led me to believe that's a good defender. Now, one of the really cool things about teams is because both teams are operating off different matrices, you can have a situation where maybe I put down Tau as a first defender, and I think, hey, they don't have two good armies to attack my Tau. Whereas the person on the other side of the table can think, oh, we've got two armies that will put up a 20 against this Tau. And that's where things get really interesting. It comes down to matchup knowledge and things like that. But conceptually speaking, you do have to trust your matrix. You have to trust your people and know their matchups and kind of work off that. Armies I like to attack with are armies that, again, kind of struggle into a lot of their armies and have a chance to kind of be used up early. And I think a great example was in our pairing process, which first of all, Phil, I'm not saying like I paired perfectly against y'all. I think y'all paired very well. I think it was maybe roughly equal. Maybe you think it was better for you, whatever. That's totally fine. But I think it's a good example of what we're talking about because we both know it.
Yeah.
So against y'all, you defended Blood Angels, which are going to take a dense board. They're a melee army. So what's the number one thing I'm not going to do? I'm not going to attack them with an army that really wants a shooting board, because those Blood Angels are obviously going to take a dense army. So I think I don't remember the two armies we attacked with, but I know one of them was our Gene Stealer cults, and our Gene Stealer cults had a lot of bad matchups into. I think it was like 4 below average matchups and like 4 average ones. So if I could get them into one of their few decent matchups, which I think Blood Angels were, then I'm very happy to use them early up. Now, another really cool thing about teams and where you take it from, maybe a middling team to really take it to the next level, and I've been lucky to learn from some really great teams players like Kit and Sam Pope, is you also think of the after effects it has on the rest of the matrix later on. One thing, Phil, I think your team does very well, or you specifically did very well, is you think about the effect of using up terrain. So you think, hey, they have a lot of shooting armies. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to defend with a melee army, take a dense board out of the way, and then that means there are more open boards left for our future pairings. The other thing you really don't want to do is, if you're defending, so I guess we're kind of talking, I first talked about how you choose an army to defend, then I talked about how you choose armies to attack. The third thing I want to talk about is when you're defending, how you choose which of those armies that are attacking you're going to play against. One thing I really don't like to do is let my opponent have a bad army and let them off the hook. So say they have an army, they've attacked you with 2 armies, and one of those armies, you've got like 3 or 4 armies that will put up like a huge score against it, what's called a dark green, okay? I don't like to accept that attacker early on and kind of let them off the hook. I want them thinking like, hey, we have a huge points bounty waiting for us later on. And now they're going to struggle because they were not let off the hook that their army with a lot of bad matchups got one of its few good matchups. It's now waiting on later on. The opponent's team is now going to have to play, hey, are they going to get a huge score against this army? Or might have to make concessions to try to, force it into one of its few good matchups. So, yeah. And the tiebreaker is, when you get good teams, you're thinking about a lot of different things. The tiebreaker, if you're ever unsure, like which of the 2 attackers to attack against, I always just use the tiebreaker, like what's that specific defender is better into. Like if it's like they think they get a 20 against one of them and like a 16 against one of them, and it doesn't really matter there's no like after effects based on which one I pick, just pick the one with a higher score in the short term.
No, that's really, Mike, that's a great breadth of knowledge, like to hear it all kind of laid out, because for those that are watching, like you'll realize, and this is what makes teams so much fun and so enjoyable, is like every decision cascades into other impacts on decisions that you'll make. Mm-hmm. Like there is no such thing as an isolated decision and not having impacts down the line, because the terrain that you choose is going to matter. The armies that you put out are going to matter. The attackers that you accept are going to matter. Each one of those things, and then when you put them out matters, right? Because as Mike said, like, we put up Blood Angels first into him, and our intent behind it was like, we can pick a matchup, we can put ourselves on a great board and say, hey, we're not concerned with the wider area of all the things that we can go into. We only had like one red matchup for him, which was Grey Knights, because we were like, hey, it is just deadly. It will pick up power armor like nobody's business. We will take anything else. Even he was running, Mike's team was running a very interesting triple repulsor executioner, double land raider. And we were like, we'll take that as long as we can put it on a heavy board, because we can go tie it up. We can go get in combat. Like, we are okay with all those things. We wanted to avoid one matchup for that. So that's why we did that as a first defender. Now, Mike said it a little bit, but the pairing process for him, I did probably 30 times of just like all the iterations, because at the end of the day, my team gave me the information that we needed, and me and a player on the team, Nick Rosasco, we just went through the pairing process a couple times. We even did some like random things, because you can't predict everything. And I initially, when I first started playing teams, I was like, oh, I'm trying to predict all these things. No, I usually trying to find isolated scenarios to take advantage of, because there's so many variables. Could like trying to predict all of them is pretty tough. I can usually get a good idea of what I think my opponents will do, but I'm looking for just like those individual ones. Like, I know if my opponent puts out AdMech and I have these two armies remaining, I probably want to put these two armies into AdMech, right? Or, T-Suns with 30 Scarab called Terminators. I know that's going to be something I see. Okay, if I see this pairing, this is probably what I'm looking to do or looking to take advantage of. Because as the pairing goes on and gets tighter and tighter, you can kind of feel it. Like, you're like, I haven't seen this army yet, or I haven't been able to, like, they haven't put it out as a defender, or they haven't even put it out as an attacker. And I'm just like watching them look at their cards like, please, I need to get this army off the board.
Oh, yeah.
I have to handle it. Otherwise, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble, because I only have so many matchups that are actually good into it, which is really interesting. It's so fun.
Yeah, all really great points. I think another thing I want to talk about is, I talked about the concept of, you don't want to defend with an army with two dark reds, or like two very bad matchups, because then they'll attack with those. If they're playing optimally, they'll attack with those and put up a big score against you. I want to also make sure that when you're looking at those two red matchups, ask yourself the question, are they both red if I get my table choice? So I think, for example, try to think of a good example. It's a little tricky off the top of my head.
I would say like Blood Angels into like Imperial Knights with double Gacta spoilers.
Sure, yeah, exactly. That's nice for an old Gatman. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great example. If you have your Blood Angels defending and the opponent's roster has, let's say, I'm not sure Chaos Knights are, okay, let's just say theoretically speaking, their specific Chaos Knights list is very good in your Blood Angels. They have another list that's very good in your Blood Angels. It's like Shooty Chaos Knights, another list. You think, Mike said don't defend with an army that has two bad matchups. But the reality is, if you defend with your Blood Angels, first of all, they attack with the one army that's other very good into you. But the second is, if they attack with those Chaos Knights, it's no longer a bad matchup if you get that board choice. So I think you got to really think about, there's almost like two matrices. There's like the matrix in theory, in general, and there's the matrix of, okay, how does the board choice evaluate that? I would say if you're like a newer team, honestly, like, it's almost like, I would even say, like, don't worry about that. You'll like make yourself dizzy, like stick to more of the fundamentals we talked about earlier. But as you get more advanced, you start thinking about the effects of board choice on how that skews those matchups. You're not looking at a matrix in general, you're thinking, hey, this army, but if I get like, you'll know like how to adjust that up and down looking at the matrix row if that army gets table choice against each of those matchups. And that's where a really experienced tables captain or experienced pairings captain that has a lot of just experience against a lot of different armies is helpful.
No, absolutely. Yeah. But there is such a thing as data overload, because
for sure, 100%.
Yeah, for those that love Excel, like my Excel spreadsheet for Teams is like 4 tabs. I have multiple, like I have table preferences, and then I have 2 separate matrices. And like one of my teammates was like, hey, what if we did a matrix for every team? And I'm like, I ain't doing that. I can't be bothered to do that, because that's too much. It's
no one's got that kind of time. Yeah.
No. So there is such a thing as like data overload. At the end of the day, you want your captain to be able to make educated decisions. There's nothing against the rules to like turn around to your team and be like, hey, Andre or Matt, come here. Like, what do you think about these
Yeah, yeah.
two? Like, if you get your board, do you think you're better into these two? Lean
Mhm.
on your subject matter experts. Lean on your great players that are a part of your team and trust them, right? If they tell you that's
Yeah,
the case,
100%.
show some trust in your team. And if that's what they say, that's what they say.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, Phil. I will also say, just kind of speaking of higher level concepts, and this is more like a personal theory than something I think is like established teams knowledge. But I think every player has kind of like a different playstyle, but also like kind of psychological profile. I don't want to overthink it too much, but some people on your team, some guys or gals you play with, have like a personality or confidence type that if they get a matchup they think is bad, they will just like kind of self-destruct. They're like, oh no, I've got this awful matchup. I can't let this happen. And you've got some people that are like very happy. They're like, whatever, I'll play for tie versus everything. That's kind of my play style. So I think when doing pairings, sometimes you have to make a choice to like protect one player over another. I think there also is a little bit of that element. I think people have slightly different psychological profiles. And I think in a captain, if you really want to hit that highest level, you will consider not just the armies, but who's playing. And I think also there's an element of some people, like say you're facing an opposing team and they've got like one or two maybe like quote unquote superstar players, like big names or people known for like winning all the local events. There are some people that will, if they get paired in that specific person, they will play up to the challenge. And other people are like, oh no, like I can't play this person. Like he or she is way better than me. They're gonna, freaking destroy me. It'd be hopeless. Even if you think in theory the matchup is kind of good. So I think there's like, this is more just like theory as you really try to hit that highest level and gain more experience. Do try to keep your players' psychological profiles. I mean, psychological profile is a little too serious, but hopefully, Phil, hopefully that made sense. I'm talking about something that hopefully people can put into practice.
Yeah, I think the
Did you
way
have
we
any
can
element of that on
summarize
your
that.
team? Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I totally agree. I think to summarize that in a way that is digestible for a captain is like, hey, it's not just the armies that you pair into matter, it's the people you pair into matter as
Mm-hmm.
well, right? Like I will confidently say that I've grown as a 40k player in my time, and I don't think now there's not a single person that I'm not afraid to go. Like, I'm not afraid of anyone to go into. I will play into anyone.
Sure.
Like, it does not matter. Like, I will do those things because I love the game and I feel very confident in how I play the game.
Mm-hmm.
When I was coming up and I was playing better and better players, there were times where mentally I doubted myself because I was like, oh man, this player is so good. Like, look at them, they're top 100 or whatever the case is. Or I see them on stream, or like I know they're on Art of War. So I'm like super scared of them. So I play differently because I'm so concerned about like how much better they are than me.
Great
I
point.
now
Yeah.
believe, yeah, I now believe my confidence has gotten to the point that has allowed me to play into those better players and learn those things. And confidence takes time, it takes experience, it takes actually playing the games. So if you have a player that needs a confidence boost, because for us on our team, I'll give them a shout out. We had a great round great round three into bottom table heroes. There was a young man on that team named Logan. He had 20-0'd two
Mm.
people the prior round. And the third round, he 20-0'd one of my players, like one of
Mm-hmm.
probably the best Chaos Knight players in the state. He 20-0'd him with orcs. And I was like, I was standing next to him and I was watching him, and we gave him a whole bunch of shit. And I could tell that, like, he was a little rattled. He was a little mentally like, oh man, I can't believe I just did
Yeah,
that. I
yeah.
can't believe I let a 9-year-old do that to me. And I knew that next round was going to be super important because it was going to be our final round of the tournament. That was going to be win or lose. Like, if we won it, we would win the tournament. If we lost it, like, there was a chance we drop out of first place. So for me,
Yeah.
mentally, I was like, man, I really want to get Steve into a good matchup that boosts his confidence, that helps him, swing back from, I would say, what was a mental low for him. And he'll admit that as
Mm-hmm.
well. And that's okay. But mentally, I was putting it in the back of my head, like, man, I really want Steve in a good matchup. I will sacrifice like myself to go into a worse matchup if it means Steve can go into a good one. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, like, you as a captain
100%.
don't need to put too much investment in that in terms of like psychologically analyzing your players in terms of where they're at. But you can just take care of players as a good captain, as someone who's played
Yeah.
sports my entire life. Like, care about my guys and girls that have played with me, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure they have the best opportunities to succeed, which means like I care
Mm-hmm.
about the armies they go into. I care about how they're playing and how they're feeling. Like, those are things that matter to me. So I will make sure like I am monitoring them mentally so they're good and they're enjoying themselves, because at the end of the day we're
Yeah.
playing 40k for fun.
Exactly, Phil. I also want to talk about, and this is just, again, I mean, I feel like there's infinite rabbit holes we can go down. Feel free to stop me at any point. But one more I want to talk about, if you're a captain and you want to be a leader on a team, is it's easy. There are some people in 40k that if they have some bad scores, maybe they had a match that they thought was good and they get blown out, or they're scoring below their expected, they're going to kind of end up feeling bad or feeling like kind of moping a little bit. I think it's important as a captain to, like, if you see someone kind of did below projection, kind of like let them know, like, that's okay. Like, I think it's very important, especially as a captain, but really anyone on the team, if like you lose like a close round, like you cannot ever insinuate or blame someone that like lost a game that round and be like, man, like you really like screwed us by like getting blown out of that matchup. I think if you're ever going to say something like that, you should just not even play Teams 40k and all. Because the reality is, no matter how good you are or how good you think a matchup is, you're ultimately, people make mistakes in life. You can have an off day. Dice can maybe have like a 1 in a million skew against you. There's always a chance it goes poorly. It's really important as a captain to never ever assign blame and like let people know if he or she did really poorly around. Like, go check in and be like, hey, proud of you for battling. Maybe the matchup was worse. I guess the matchup was worse than we thought. Like, never put blame on them. Always important to like put blame on yourself. Like at the round, if we lose, I'll be like, maybe I didn't understand the matchups very well. Could have paired better. I think it's always important to put the blame on yourself if you're a team captain. If you can never ever put blame on a player for like losing or getting a bad score. That's a complete no for me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that's a great thing to end on, because if we talk about like all the strategy that Mike and I talked about, all the things that you can think about as a team's captain, or even just a member of the team, and you're helping out with pairings, or you're doing all these things.
Yeah.
Like, none of this matters if at the end of the day, the 8, guys and girls that came and played 40k with you don't want to come play 40k with you again, because it is very easy to be upset, to be disheartened with how you did and want to point fingers and all that stuff. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike. Like, one, this is a hobby that people are spending their own time and money and honestly energy to go do. Secondly, like, it is a lot of work. We're asking people to work together as an 8-man team to go forward and play 40k for fun. And if you are fortunate enough to be successful, at the end of the day, like, it's going to happen. People are going to make mistakes, and if you rag on them for that, like, all you're going to end up doing is upsetting yourself, because you're putting negative energy into yourself about their performance, whatever the case is, and then that negative energy just spills out onto your team. And you as the captain need to be that, like, maybe it's the stable rock that doesn't have highs, doesn't have lows, is just calm, cool, and collected. Maybe it's the individual who's like positive and encouraging. Or maybe it's the individual that, like, watches the team develop around him. Maybe it's that quiet type that, hey, everyone can rely on Mike, because they know at the end of the day, he will take whatever matchup you throw at him. He will take it gladly. He will make sure he puts his teammates in good positions, and that is perfectly fine. But you got to decide what kind of leader you're going to be. Yeah, you got to decide what kind of leader you're going to be. But that leader needs to lift up the people
100%.
around you. Yeah. Mike, 100%. I really appreciate you taking the time. This was great. This was great information. If you have any other questions, I recommend you get on our Discord, the Mastercrafted Discord. Hit up Mike. You can hit up myself. There's plenty of Teams players in there that love talking about teams, because I will confidently say it is the most fun I've ever had playing 40K. Like, this is my 5th Teams tournament, and if there's an opportunity, I will take it, because it's just so much dang fun.
Yeah, I will say, if you watched the video and you enjoyed it and you don't like and subscribe to Mastercrafted, I will find you and I will give you the worst pairing of your life if we ever play on the same team. But yeah, no, Phil, this was a genuine pleasure. Oh, 100%. I've got a few people on my shit list. I can't wait to give them a bad matchup. But yeah, no, Phil, this was awesome, and I think hopefully we gave people a lot of actionable items without overwhelming them. Because 100%, once you take the Teams pill, you never go back. It's such an exciting way to play. The camaraderie is freaking next level. The enjoyment is next level. The highs are next level. Get out, even if you're a little newer, don't be afraid to go out and battle in the team streets. All you're going to do is gain experience and have fun. So go out there, play some teams, subscribe to Mastercrafted, and roll well. Final piece of advice I can give.
Thank you, Mike. And guys, don't forget, victory isn't given. It's forged, and it's forged right here on Mastercrafted. Have a good night.
All right. Thanks, everyone.